Hello everyone. Today I'm going to share with you the most shocking moment of my entire life. My son forgot to hang up the phone. And I heard everything. Mom's so naive. After we get the 30 million, we'll send her to that nursing home, he said. In that moment, I could hear my heart pounding in my ears. But what he didn't know, I had a surprise of my own waiting for him. If you enjoy these real family drama stories, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Now let me tell you how it all began. My name is Margaret, but everyone calls me Maggie. I'm 62 years old, and 3 years ago I lost my husband of 40 years, Robert. We lived a modest life together, or at least, that's what everyone thought. What nobody knew was that Robert had been making small, careful investments our entire marriage. Real estate here, some stocks there, a little business venture that paid off better than anyone expected. When he passed away from cancer, I discovered he'd left me with something I never expected, our inheritance worth $30 million. $30 million. I still remember staring at the bank statements, thinking there had to be some mistake. But there wasn't. My quiet, humble husband had somehow built us a fortune, and now it was all mine. I hadn't told anyone about the money. Not my neighbors, not my friends, and especially not my son Michael. I wanted to keep living simply, to think carefully about what to do with such an enormous blessing. But there was one thing I knew for certain: I wanted to help my boy. Michael is my only child, my pride and joy. He's 35 now, married to a woman named Jessica, and they have 2 beautiful children, Emma, who's 7, and little Tommy, who just turned 5. But Michael has always struggled financially. He's a good man with a big heart, but he's never quite found his footing in the business world. Every venture he's tried has failed, every job seems to end in disappointment, and I've watched him grow more frustrated and desperate with each passing year. Jessica tries to be supportive, but I can see the strain in their marriage. They live paycheck to paycheck in a cramped apartment, the kids share a bedroom, and I know Michael feels like he's failing as a provider. It breaks my heart to watch. So I'd been thinking, what if I gave him the money? Not all of it, of course, but enough to change his life. Enough for him to start his own business, buy a proper house for his family, maybe even set aside college funds for Emma and Tommy. I imagined his face when I told him, the relief and joy in his eyes. I pictured him hugging me, maybe even crying a little, telling me how grateful he was. I'd been planning to surprise him with the news on his birthday next month. I'd even started looking into the paperwork, talking to my financial advisor about the best way to transfer that kind of money. I wanted everything to be perfect, legal, and clean. This was going to be my gift to my son, financial freedom, a chance to finally live the life he deserved. But I wanted to be smart about it too. Robert had always told me to be careful with money, to make sure I understood what I was signing before I signed it. So I'd been taking my time, asking questions, making sure I did everything right. What I didn't know was that Michael had been watching me. He'd noticed my trips to the bank, the meetings with lawyers and financial advisors. And somehow, he'd figured out that I had money. A lot of money. Looking back now, I can see the signs I missed. The way he started calling more often, always asking how I was feeling, if I needed help with anything. The way Jessica started being extra nice to me, bringing the kids over more frequently, staying for longer visits. They'd both started talking about how I was getting older, how I shouldn't be living alone, how they worried about my safety and health. At the time, I thought it was sweet. I thought they were just being caring family members. I was touched by their attention, grateful for their concern. I had no idea they were laying groundwork for something else entirely. It was a Tuesday morning in October. I remember because I was making my famous apple cinnamon muffins, something I only do when the weather starts getting crisp. The kitchen smelled like autumn, and I was humming an old song Robert used to love while I worked. My phone rang around 10:30. It was Michael. "Hey Mom," he said, and his voice sounded rushed, distracted. "I'm about to go into a meeting, but I wanted to check on you real quick. How are you feeling today?" "I'm wonderful, honey," I told him. "Just baking some muffins. How are Jessica and the kids?" "They're great. Listen, Mom, I've got to run. This meeting is really important for work. Can I call you back later?" "Of course, sweetheart. Good luck with your meeting." "Thanks, Mom. Love you. Love you too. I heard him say goodbye, and then I thought I heard the line go dead. I set my phone down on the counter and went back to my muffins, pulling them out of the oven and setting them on cooling racks. They looked perfect, golden brown and smelling like heaven. I was just starting to clean up when I heard voices coming from my phone. At first, I thought maybe I was imagining things, or perhaps I'd accidentally turned on the radio. But then I heard Michael's voice, clear as day. "Okay, she's off the phone," he was saying. My heart skipped a beat. He hadn't hung up. The line was still open. I should have hung up myself right then. I should have called him back and told him about the mistake. But something in his tone made me pause. There was something about the way he said, "she's off the phone," that didn't sit right with me. It sounded calculating. I picked up the phone and listened. "So you talked to the lawyer?" That was Jessica's voice. "Yeah, I met with him yesterday. He says as long as we can prove she's not mentally competent to make financial decisions, we can get power of attorney. And once we have that, we can access all of it," Jessica finished. My blood turned to ice. "How much do you think it really is?" Jessica asked. "From what I've been able to piece together, at least 30 million. Maybe more." I had to grab the counter to keep from falling. They knew. Somehow, they knew about the money. 30 million, Jessica repeated, and I could hear the awe in her voice. "Michael, do you realize what this means? We'd never have to worry about money again. The kids could go to any college they want. We could buy that house in Riverside Heights." "I know," Michael said, and his voice was getting excited now. "But we have to be smart about this. We can't just take the money and run. We need to make it look like we're taking care of her." The nursing home idea? Exactly. Sunset Manor is perfect. It's expensive enough that it looks like we're sparing no expense for her care, but it's also institutional. Once she's there, isolated from her friends, maybe with some medication to keep her calm and confused, no one will question our management of her finances. I felt sick. Actually, physically sick. I had to sit down on one of my kitchen stools because my legs were shaking so badly. "But what if she fights it?" Jessica asked. "What if she doesn't want to go?" Michael laughed. It was a cold sound, nothing like the warm laugh I remembered from his childhood. "Mom's so naive, Jessica. She trusts me completely. She'd probably thank me for finding her such a nice place. And if she does resist, well, we'll just convince her that she's not thinking clearly. That she needs professional care. Maybe we'll even get a doctor to back us up." "A doctor?" "Dr. Peterson owes me a favor. I helped him out of that malpractice suit last year. I think he'd be willing to sign off on a psychiatric evaluation if I asked him to." "Michael." Jessica's voice was hesitant. "Are you sure about this? I mean, she's your mother. She's also sitting on a fortune while her son struggles to pay rent," Michael snapped. "Do you know how many times I've had to choose between groceries and electricity this month? How many times I've had to tell Emma she can't have something because Daddy doesn't have the money? Meanwhile, Mom's sitting in that house, hoarding millions of dollars." "But maybe if you just asked her." "Asked her what?" "Hey Mom, I know you've been hiding the fact that you're rich, can you give me some money?" She'd probably deny she even has it. "No, this way is better. This way we get everything, and she gets taken care of. It's a win-win." I was crying now, silent tears streaming down my face. This couldn't be real. This couldn't be my son talking about me like I was just an obstacle to overcome. "When do we start?" Jessica asked. "I'm meeting with the lawyer again tomorrow to discuss the competency hearing. He thinks we can have it wrapped up within a month. Maybe sooner if we can get Dr. Peterson to move quickly on the evaluation." "And the nursing home?" "I already put her name on the waiting list. Told them it was urgent, that she was having memory issues and couldn't safely live alone anymore. They're expecting to have an opening in about 6 weeks. 6 weeks. They had planned out the next 6 weeks of my life, and it ended with me locked away in an institution while they spent my money. What about her house? Jessica asked. We'll sell it, obviously. That's probably another million right there. Maybe two, depending on the market. My house. The house Robert and I had bought as newlyweds, where we'd raised Michael, where every room held memories of our life together. They were going to sell it like it was just another asset to liquidate. You know what the best part is? Michael said, and his voice was positively gleeful now. She'll never see it coming. Mom's always been too trusting, too naive. She still thinks I'm her little boy who can do no wrong. She has no idea what I'm capable of. That was the moment my heart truly broke. Not when he talked about the money, not when he talked about the nursing home, but when he called me naive. When he talked about me like I was some foolish old woman who couldn't see what was right in front of her face. I hung up the phone with shaking hands and sat there in my kitchen, surrounded by the smell of cinnamon muffins and the wreckage of everything I thought I knew about my son. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard Michael's voice saying those horrible words. Mom's so naive. She'll never see it coming. She has no idea what I'm capable of. By morning, I had made a decision. If my son thought I was naive, if he thought I was just some helpless old woman he could manipulate and discard, then he was about to learn just how wrong he was. I called my bank as soon as they opened. First National. This is Sandra. How can I help you? Hi Sandra. This is Margaret Ellis. I need to speak with someone about my accounts. Of course. Mrs. Ellis. What can I help you with today? I want to know if anyone else has tried to access my accounts or get information about them recently. There was a pause. Let me transfer you to Mr. Davidson in account security. Mr. Davidson was a serious man with a crisp voice who didn't waste time on pleasantries. Mrs. Ellis, I see here that you have several high-value accounts with us. Can you tell me specifically what you're concerned about? I have reason to believe that someone may be trying to gain unauthorized access to my financial information. I see. Let me pull up your files. I heard typing. Mrs. Ellis, I do show that we've had several inquiries about your accounts in the past month. My stomach dropped. What kind of inquiries? Someone claiming to be your son called 3 times asking about your account balances and investment portfolios. We didn't give out any information, of course, but he did seem to know some details about your finances that suggested he might have legitimate access. He doesn't, I said firmly. He has no authorized access to any of my accounts. I understand. There's also a note here that someone came in person last week asking about power of attorney procedures. Someone came to the bank? Yes. A man who identified himself as Michael Ellis. He said he was concerned about your mental health and wanted to know what steps he would need to take to manage your finances if you became incapacitated. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. What did you tell him? We gave him general information about our power of attorney policies. Nothing specific to your accounts. But Mrs. Ellis, I have to ask, are you experiencing any health issues that would make it difficult for you to manage your own finances? Absolutely not, I said, my voice sharp. I am in perfect mental and physical health, and I do not want anyone else to have access to my accounts under any circumstances. Understood. I'm going to put a note in your file immediately that you've specifically denied authorization for anyone else to access your accounts. I'm also going to recommend that we set up additional security measures. After I hung up with the bank, I called my lawyer, Patricia Wong. Patricia had handled Robert's estate and had been our family lawyer for over a decade. Patricia, I need to see you today. It's urgent. Of course, Margaret. Is everything all right? I'll explain when I see you. 2 hours later, I was sitting in Patricia's office, telling her everything. She listened without interrupting, taking notes in her careful handwriting. Margaret, she said when I finished, what your son is planning is elder financial abuse. It's not just unethical, it's illegal. What can I do? Several things. First, we're going to update your power of attorney documents to make it explicitly clear that you have not granted anyone authority over your finances. Second, we're going to put legal safeguards in place to prevent anyone from challenging your mental competency without your consent. And third, we're going to document everything. Document everything? If this escalates, if your son actually tries to have you declared incompetent, we're going to need evidence that you were aware of his plans and took steps to protect yourself. I want you to write down everything you remember from that phone call, with as much detail as possible. I also want you to start keeping a daily journal documenting your mental state, your activities, your decision-making processes. You want me to prove I'm sane? I want you to create a paper trail that will make it impossible for anyone to claim you're not. That afternoon, I went to see my doctor, Dr. Maria Santos. I'd been seeing her for 15 years, and she knew me well. Maria, I need you to do a complete cognitive assessment on me. Dr. Santos looked confused. Margaret, is there something wrong? Are you experiencing memory problems? Confusion? No, nothing like that. But I need official documentation of my mental state for legal reasons. She asked a few more questions, and I explained the situation without going into too much detail. An hour later, after a battery of tests and evaluations, Dr. Santos handed me a letter. Margaret, your cognitive function is excellent. Actually, your test scores are above average for someone your age. You show no signs of dementia, confusion, or any other condition that would impair your decision-making ability. I felt a surge of satisfaction. Let Michael try to claim I was mentally incompetent now. But I wasn't done. That evening, I called my old friend Dorothy, who worked at Sunset Manor. Dorothy, it's Margaret Ellis. I have a strange question for you. Sure, honey, what's up? Has anyone been asking about putting me in your facility? There was a pause. Actually, yes. Your son called last week. He said you were having memory problems and might need care soon. I told him we'd be happy to do an assessment whenever you were ready. Dorothy, I want you to know that I have no memory problems, and I have no intention of moving to a nursing home anytime soon. Okay. Should I remove your name from our waiting list? Please do. And Dorothy, if my son calls again, please don't discuss my case with him. He doesn't have my permission to make inquiries on my behalf. By the end of the day, I had built a fortress around myself. Legal documents, medical records, bank security measures. If Michael wanted to try to take control of my life, he was going to find it much harder than he expected. But I still wasn't ready to confront him directly. I wanted to see how far he would go. I wanted to catch him in the act. Over the next week, I watched my son like a hawk. Not obviously, I'm not naive despite what he thinks, but carefully, strategically. I started paying attention to things I'd never noticed before. Like how he always steered our conversations toward my health and my living situation. How he'd make little comments about how big and empty my house was, how it must be lonely rattling around in all those rooms. How he'd mention news stories about elderly people who'd fallen and couldn't get help, or who'd been scammed because they were living alone. I realized he'd been grooming me for months, maybe longer. Planting seeds of doubt about my ability to live independently, making me question my own judgment. If I hadn't overheard that phone call, I might have eventually started to believe him. I also started noticing how Jessica behaved around me. She was different now that I knew what she was really thinking. The smiles seemed forced, the compliments felt hollow. When she brought the kids over, she'd watch me interact with them like she was taking notes. Grandma seems a little confused today, she said to Michael one afternoon. Right in front of me. After I'd temporarily forgotten where I'd put my reading glasses. They were on my head. Which is where they always are. Mom, are you feeling okay? Michael asked, his voice full of fake concern. You seem a little scattered lately. I'm fine, I said, watching them exchange a look. Just getting older, I suppose. Maybe we should look into getting you some help around the house, Jessica suggested. Someone to keep you company. Help with shopping and cleaning. That's a great idea, Michael agreed. In fact, I know a service that provides live-in care. Very professional, very discreet. A live-in caregiver. Another step toward proving I couldn't take care of myself. I don't think I need that yet, I said mildly. Mom, it's not about what you need, Michael said, his tone becoming slightly sharper. It's about being proactive. Being smart about your future. The irony wasn't lost on me. My son was lecturing me about being smart while plotting to steal my money. That Thursday, Michael called with exciting news. Mom, I found a great doctor I want you to meet. Dr. Peterson. He specializes in geriatric care, and he's supposed to be fantastic. Dr. Peterson. The doctor Michael had mentioned owing him a favor. I already have a doctor, honey. Dr. Santos has been taking great care of me for years. I know, but Dr. Peterson has some new approaches to cognitive health. Preventative stuff. I really think you'd benefit from talking to him. I don't think I need, Mom. His voice was firm now, with an edge I didn't like. This is important. I'm worried about you. We all are. I've already made you an appointment for next Tuesday. There it was. The first real push. He wasn't asking anymore, he was telling me. All right, I said, keeping my voice meek and compliant. If you think it's best. I do. And Mom? I'll come with you, to help explain your symptoms to the doctor. My symptoms. The symptoms I didn't have. That's very thoughtful of you, dear. After we hung up, I called Patricia immediately. He's moving faster than we expected, she said. The appointment with Dr. Peterson is clearly the first step toward getting you declared incompetent. What should I do? Go to the appointment. But before you do, I want you to meet with Dr. Santos again. Get her to do another cognitive assessment, and make sure she documents the date and time. Then, I want you to wear a recording device to the appointment with Dr. Peterson. Is that legal? In this state, yes, as long as one party to the conversation consents. You're consenting to record your own conversation. What if he tries to say I'm incompetent? Then we'll have a recording of him doing it without proper medical justification. Trust me, Margaret. We're going to catch them in the act. That weekend, Michael and Jessica came over for Sunday dinner. It was surreal. Sitting at my dining room table with them, serving pot roast and mashed potatoes, making small talk about the weather and the kids' school activities, all while knowing what they were planning. Mom, Michael said as I was clearing the dessert plates, Jessica and I have been talking about your future. My future? Well, you're not getting any younger, Jessica said with that fake sympathetic smile. And this house is so big for just one person. We've been looking at some really nice senior communities, Michael added. Places where you'd have your own apartment, but with medical care available if you need it. I don't need medical care. Not yet, he said. But wouldn't it be nice to know it was there? And think about all the activities they have. Book clubs, gardening groups, movie nights. You'd make so many new friends. I like my current friends just fine. Mom, be practical. Michael's voice was getting that edge again. How long do you think you can keep up this house? The yard work, the maintenance, the cleaning? And what if something happens to you? What if you fall, or have a medical emergency? By the time someone found you, it could be too late. I looked at my son, this man I'd raised and loved and sacrificed for, and felt nothing but sadness. Not just for what he was trying to do to me, but for what he'd become. When had he turned into someone who could look his mother in the eye and manipulate her with such calculated cruelty? I suppose you're right, I said finally. Maybe I should start thinking about the future. Both of their faces lit up. Really? Jessica asked. Really? In fact, why don't you start looking at some places for me? I trust your judgment. The smile Michael gave me then was the most genuine I'd seen from him in months. Because he thought he was winning. He had no idea that I was 3 steps ahead of him. Tuesday morning arrived grey and drizzly. I dressed carefully, nothing too fancy, nothing too shabby. I wanted to look like exactly what I was, a competent, well-groomed woman in her 60s with no obvious signs of mental decline. The recording device Patricia had given me was smaller than a matchbox, tucked discreetly in my purse. I'd tested it the night before to make sure I knew how to work it. Michael picked me up at 10:30. He was unusually chatty during the drive, asking about my sleep, my appetite, whether I'd been feeling confused or forgetful lately. Just the normal stuff, I told him. You know how it is when you get older. Of course, he said, but I could hear the satisfaction in his voice. He was building his case, and he thought I was helping him do it. Dr. Peterson's office was in a sleek medical building downtown. The waiting room was all beige and burgundy, with classical music playing softly in the background. Very soothing, very professional. Mrs. Ellis? A nurse appeared. Dr. Peterson will see you now. Dr. Peterson was younger than I'd expected, maybe 45, with prematurely gray hair and wire-rimmed glasses. He had the kind of demeanor that was probably meant to be reassuring but struck me as condescending. Mrs. Ellis, please, have a seat. Michael has told me so much about you. Michael had taken a seat in the corner, notebook and pen in hand like he was my caregiver. Now then, Dr. Peterson continued, I understand you've been having some concerns about your memory and cognitive function. Actually, I haven't been having any concerns, I said clearly. My son has been having concerns. Dr. Peterson glanced at Michael, who jumped in immediately. Mom, we talked about this. You've been forgetting things, getting confused. Remember last week when you couldn't find your car keys? I had forgotten where I'd put my car keys. They were in the refrigerator, where I'd absent-mindedly set them down while putting away groceries. It happens to everyone. That's true, I acknowledged. I did misplace my keys. And you've been repeating yourself in conversations, Michael added, telling the same stories over and over. That was a lie, but I didn't contradict him. I wanted to see how far this would go. Dr. Peterson made notes while Michael spoke. Mrs. Ellis, have you been feeling anxious or depressed lately? Not particularly. Any trouble sleeping? No more than usual. Problems with decision-making? Difficulty managing your finances or household tasks? No. Michael tells me you've been resistant to the idea of accepting help with daily activities. And there it was. The real purpose of this visit wasn't to assess my mental health. It was to establish that I was being unreasonable by refusing the help they wanted to force on me. I don't feel I need help with daily activities, I said. But don't you think it would be wise to be proactive? Dr. Peterson asked. To put support systems in place before you actually need them? Perhaps. I'm going to recommend a more comprehensive evaluation, Dr. Peterson said, writing in his chart. We can schedule some cognitive testing. Maybe bring in a social worker to assess your living situation. Is that really necessary? I asked. Mrs. Ellis. At your age, these kinds of preventative measures are not just advisable. They're essential. We want to make sure you're safe and getting the care you need. I looked at Michael, who was nodding along with everything Dr. Peterson said. What kind of care are we talking about? Well, that would depend on the results of the evaluation. But potentially, we might be looking at assisted living, or even skilled nursing care if we determine that your current living situation is unsafe. Skilled nursing care. A nursing home. When would this evaluation take place? I can get you scheduled within the week. The sooner we get this process started, the sooner we can ensure your well-being. I let them think they had convinced me. I asked a few more questions, nodded at their answers, and agreed to call back to schedule the evaluation. In the car afterward, Michael was practically glowing. I'm so proud of you, Mom. I know this isn't easy, but you're making the right decision. Am I? Absolutely. Dr. Peterson is going to take great care of you. And once we get you settled somewhere safe, you won't have to worry about anything anymore. I'll handle all the difficult stuff, the finances, the paperwork, all of it. He'll handle the finances. Of course he will. That evening, I called Patricia and played her the recording. Margaret, this is textbook elder abuse, she said when it finished. Dr. Peterson didn't conduct any actual cognitive assessment. He didn't ask about your medical history, your current medications, your daily functioning. This was a setup, pure and simple. What do we do now? Now we spring our trap. The next morning, I called Michael. Honey, I've been thinking about our conversation yesterday, and I've decided you're right. I don't want to wait for the evaluation. I want to start making changes now. Really? He sounded surprised but pleased. Really? In fact, I'd like to meet with your lawyer friend to discuss transferring some of my financial responsibilities to you. I'm tired of worrying about money management. There was a pause. Mom, are you sure? I'm sure. Can you arrange a meeting for this week? Of course. I'll call him right now. And Michael? I think we should also look at those senior communities you mentioned. Maybe this weekend. That's wonderful, Mom. I'm so glad you're being proactive about this. After I hung up, I smiled for the first time in weeks. If Michael wanted to play games with my life, then we were going to play. But this time, I was going to win. Friday afternoon, I sat in the office of Michael's lawyer, a smooth-talking man named Richard Graves who had the kind of practiced smile that doesn't reach the eyes. Michael sat beside me, practically vibrating with excitement. Mrs. Ellis, Mr. Graves said, shuffling through a stack of papers, your son has explained your situation, and I think we can definitely help you streamline your financial management. Wonderful, I said. What exactly does that involve? Well, essentially, we'd be setting up a power of attorney arrangement that would allow Michael to handle all of your financial transactions. Pay your bills, manage your investments, that sort of thing. All of my financial transactions? That's generally how it works, yes. It's much simpler than trying to manage things piecemeal. I nodded thoughtfully. And what happens to my money in this arrangement? Your money remains your money, of course. Michael would just be managing it on your behalf. I see. And if I wanted to make a large purchase, or donate to charity, or change my investments? Mr. Graves and Michael exchanged a glance. Well, Mr. Graves said carefully, Michael would handle those decisions for you. Based on what's in your best interest, naturally. Naturally. And who determines what's in my best interest? Michael would, in consultation with your medical team. My medical team? Meaning Dr. Peterson. That sounds very convenient, I said. When can we make this official? Actually, we can do it right now if you'd like, Mr. Graves said, producing a document from his briefcase. I took the liberty of preparing the paperwork in advance. Of course he did. I read through the document carefully. It was even worse than I'd expected. The power of attorney was broad and irrevocable, giving Michael complete control over every aspect of my financial life. There was even a clause about my incapacity to make sound financial decisions due to age-related cognitive decline. Age-related cognitive decline. I was 62 years old and sharper than most people half my age. This is quite comprehensive, I said. We believe in being thorough, Mr. Graves replied. I can see that. But I do have one small concern. What's that? Well, it's just that I haven't actually been declared mentally incompetent by anyone. Isn't this document essentially saying that I am? Mr. Graves looked uncomfortable. It's more of a preventative measure. But it's based on the assumption that I can't manage my own affairs. Mom, Michael interjected, we talked about this. You agreed that you needed help. I agreed that I was tired of managing money, I corrected. I never agreed that I was incapable of it. The effect is the same, Mr. Graves said. Is it? Because it seems to me that there's a big difference between choosing to delegate responsibility and being declared incompetent to handle it yourself. Both men were looking distinctly uncomfortable now. Perhaps we should take some time to think about this, I said, standing up. I'd like to discuss it with my own lawyer before I sign anything. Mom, Michael's voice had an edge of panic. I thought we agreed. We agreed that I would consider it, I said firmly. And I am considering it. But I'm not signing anything today. I walked out of that office with both men staring after me, and I could practically feel their frustration radiating through the walls. That evening, Michael called. Mom, I think you're overthinking this. Mr. Graves is an excellent lawyer, and the document is perfectly standard. I'm sure it is. But I've decided I want to get a second opinion. From who? My own attorney, Patricia Wong. There was a long pause. Mom, do you really think that's necessary? I mean, this is family business. Exactly. It's my family business. Which means I should understand exactly what I'm agreeing to before I agree to it. Of course, but, Michael, let me ask you something. If the roles were reversed, if someone was asking you to sign a document giving them complete control over your finances, wouldn't you want to have it reviewed by your own lawyer first? Another pause. I suppose. Then you understand why I want to do the same thing. When are you meeting with Patricia? Monday morning. And then you'll sign the papers? I could hear the desperation creeping into his voice. We'll see what she says. That weekend, instead of looking at senior communities like we'd planned, I told Michael I wasn't feeling well. Which wasn't entirely a lie. The stress of the past few weeks had been exhausting. Sunday evening, he called to check on me. How are you feeling, Mom? A little better. Still tired. Maybe this is another sign that you need more support, he suggested. If you were somewhere with medical staff available. Maybe, I said non-committally. Mom, can I ask you something? Of course. Are you having second thoughts about the financial arrangement? Because if you are, I need to know. I've already made some commitments based on the assumption that. He stopped mid-sentence, realizing what he'd almost revealed. What kind of commitments? I asked. Nothing major. Just. I may have mentioned to Jessica that we'd be able to help her parents with their mortgage soon. Help her parents with their mortgage. With my money. I see. So it's really important that we get this finalized soon. I understand. We'll see what Patricia says tomorrow. Retry continue edit Monday morning arrived crisp and clear. I sat in Patricia's office with a sense of calm I hadn't felt in weeks. Everything was about to come to a head. Are you ready for this? Patricia asked, reviewing the stack of documents we'd prepared. More than ready. At 10 a.m. sharp, Michael arrived with Mr. Graves. They both looked confident, certain that this meeting was just a formality before I signed their papers. Patricia, I said, I'd like you to meet my son Michael and his attorney, Mr. Graves. The introductions were polite but tense. Mr. Graves clearly wasn't thrilled about having another lawyer involved. So, Patricia began, I've reviewed the power of attorney document you want Mrs. Ellis to sign. And? Mr. Graves asked. And I have several concerns. She opened her briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. First, this document grants unusually broad powers. Not just financial management, but complete control over Mrs. Ellis's assets, including the ability to sell property, liquidate investments, and make gifts to third parties. That's standard language, Mr. Graves said. Actually, it's not. Most power of attorney documents include specific limitations and oversight requirements. This one doesn't. She pulled out another document. Second, this clause about age-related cognitive decline is problematic because it implies that Mrs. Ellis is already cognitively impaired, which she's not. According to Dr. Peterson, Michael started. According to Dr. Peterson's actual notes, Patricia interrupted, producing another paper, which we subpoenaed this morning. He never conducted a cognitive assessment. He never diagnosed any form of dementia or cognitive impairment. He simply recommended further evaluation. Mr. Graves was starting to look very uncomfortable. Furthermore, Patricia continued, we have evidence that Dr. Peterson was approached by Michael Ellis before ever meeting with Mrs. Ellis, and that he was specifically asked to find grounds for declaring her incompetent. She placed a recording device on the table. We also have this. She pressed play, and the sound of my conversation with Dr. Peterson filled the room. Michael's voice was clearly audible, coaching the doctor on what to say, and Dr. Peterson's responses made it obvious that this was a predetermined outcome, not a medical evaluation. Michael's face had gone white. Where did you get that? he demanded. Mrs. Ellis recorded it herself, Patricia said calmly. Which is perfectly legal in this state. But even more interesting, she continued, is what we discovered when we started investigating Mr. Graves' practice. She pulled out another document. Mr. Graves, you've been involved in 17 similar cases over the past 5 years. Elderly clients who signed over power of attorney to family members, only to find themselves in nursing homes while their assets were liquidated. That's completely. In 12 of those cases, the same doctor provided the competency evaluations. Dr. Peterson. The room was dead silent. And in 15 of those cases, the clients ended up at the same facility, Sunset Manor. I watched Michael's face as the full scope of what he'd gotten involved in became clear. This wasn't just him trying to get my money. This was an organized operation. Mrs. Ellis, Patricia said, turning to me, do you still want to sign this power of attorney? No, I said, my voice steady and clear. I do not. Mom, Michael said desperately, you don't understand. These people are twisting everything around. I was just trying to help you. Help me. I stood up, feeling every one of my 62 years but also feeling stronger than I had in months. Michael, I heard you on the phone. I heard you call me naive. I heard you planning to put me in a nursing home so you could steal my money. That's not. I never said steal. You said I'd never see it coming. You said I was too trusting to figure out what you were doing. Michael looked around the room like a trapped animal. Mom, please. I can explain. Actually, Patricia said, before anyone explains anything, I think you should know that we've already filed a report with Adult Protective Services. And the FBI is investigating Mr. Graves' practice for elder fraud. Mr. Graves shot to his feet. I'm not saying another word without my own attorney present. That's probably wise, Patricia agreed. After they left, I sat back down in Patricia's office, feeling drained but victorious. What happens now? I asked. Now you go home and live your life, she said. The legal system will handle the rest. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of police interviews, court documents, and phone calls from investigators. Mr. Graves' operation turned out to be even bigger than Patricia had suspected. They'd stolen millions of dollars from elderly clients over the years. Michael wasn't charged criminally. As Patricia explained it, he was more of a victim than a perpetrator, manipulated by people who knew exactly how to exploit someone desperate for money. But that didn't make what he'd tried to do to me any less painful. He called me 2 weeks after the meeting in Patricia's office. Mom. His voice was small, broken. Hello, Michael. I need to apologize. And I need to explain. I'm listening. I never meant for it to go as far as it did. At first, I knew you had money, and I was so desperate. The bills were piling up, Jessica was talking about leaving me, the kids needed things I couldn't provide. So you decided to have me declared incompetent? No. That wasn't. It wasn't supposed to be like that. Mr. Graves said it would just be a formality, that we'd set up the power of attorney and then I'd be able to help you manage things better. He said you'd be happier not having to worry about finances. And the nursing home? A long pause. That was Graves' idea. He said it would look better if you were in professional care, that no one would question the financial arrangements if you were being properly looked after. And you went along with it? Yes. I went along with it. And I hate myself for it. I could hear him crying. Mom, I know I can't take it back. I know I've probably lost you forever. But I need you to know that I love you. I've always loved you. I got scared and stupid and I let other people convince me to do something horrible. Michael, I said softly, what you did wasn't just horrible. It was a betrayal of everything I am, everything I raised you to be. I know. You called me naive. You said I'd never see it coming. I was wrong. You're the strongest, smartest person I know. You always have been. Then why? Because I was desperate. And desperate people do desperate things. Even to the people they love most. We talked for an hour. He told me about the debts, the failed business ventures, the growing pressure from Jessica to provide a better life for their family. He told me about meeting Mr. Graves, who seemed to have all the answers, who made it sound so simple and reasonable. He showed me case studies, Michael said. Other families who'd done the same thing. He made it sound like I'd be helping you, not hurting you. Did you ever think to just ask me for help? Every day. But Mom, $30 million? That's not the kind of money you ask your mother for. That's life-changing money. I couldn't figure out how to even bring it up. So instead you decided to take it. Instead I decided to listen to someone who told me what I wanted to hear. When we finally hung up, I felt empty but somehow relieved. I understood now what had happened, even if I couldn't forgive it. Jessica filed for divorce 3 weeks later. The stress of the investigation, the public embarrassment, and the collapse of their financial dreams had been too much for their marriage to survive. Michael moved back in with his brother temporarily, seeing Emma and Tommy on weekends. I did something I'd been thinking about for weeks. I called Emma and Tommy and asked if they wanted to come spend the weekend with Grandma. They arrived Friday evening, bright and excited despite everything that had been happening with their parents. "Grandma," Emma asked as we made cookies together, "why is Daddy so sad all the time now?" I thought carefully about how to answer. "Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes," I said. "And when they do, they feel sad about it." "Did Daddy make a mistake about you?" I looked at my granddaughter. This beautiful, innocent child who deserved to grow up knowing that people can be both deeply flawed and deeply loved. "Yes, he did. But that doesn't mean he's a bad person. It means he's a person who made a bad choice." "Are you mad at him?" "I'm hurt," I said honestly, "but I still love him very much." "Will you forgive him?" "I'm working on it." That weekend with Emma and Tommy reminded me why family matters, even when it's complicated and painful. They needed stability, love, and security. And whatever had happened between me and their father, I wasn't going to let them suffer for it. I started a college fund for each of them that Monday. 6 months later, I was sitting in my garden, enjoying the spring sunshine, when my phone rang. It was Michael. "Mom, I have some news." "What kind of news?" "Good news, I think. I got a job. A real job, with benefits and everything. It's not glamorous, I'm managing a hardware store, but it's honest work, and it pays enough for me to get my own apartment." "That's wonderful, Michael." "And Mom, I've been going to therapy. Trying to understand why I made the choices I made. Trying to figure out how to be a better person." "How's that going?" "It's hard. But I think it's helping. My therapist says I need to learn to ask for help instead of trying to take what I need." We talked for a while about his new job, his therapy, his relationship with the kids. He sounded different, more mature, more thoughtful. The desperate edge was gone from his voice. "Mom," he said finally, "I know I have no right to ask this, but would you be willing to have dinner with me sometime? I'd like to try to start rebuilding our relationship." I thought about it. The hurt was still there, probably always would be. But underneath it, the love was still there too. "Yes," I said. "I'd like that." We met the following Sunday at a small restaurant downtown. Michael looked older, more worn, but also more honest somehow. The practiced charm was gone, replaced by something more genuine. "I don't expect you to trust me again," he said over dessert. "I know I have to earn that back. But I want you to know that I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of the mother who raised me." "Michael," I said, "I need you to understand something. What you did to me wasn't just about money. You tried to take away my autonomy, my dignity, my right to make my own choices about my life." "I know. And you did it while telling yourself it was for my own good." "I know that too." "That's the part that scares me the most. Not that you wanted the money, but that you were able to convince yourself that destroying my life was somehow helping me." He nodded, tears in his eyes. "My therapist says that's called rationalization. When you want something so badly that you convince yourself any way of getting it is justified. And now I'm trying to learn the difference between what I want and what I deserve. And how to accept that those aren't always the same thing. We started having dinner once a month. Slowly, carefully, we began to rebuild something. Not the relationship we'd had before, that was gone forever, but something new. Something more honest, more equal. I never told him about the $30 million. I figured he'd suffered enough consequences for coveting money he didn't know I had. Instead, I quietly began donating large sums to charities that helped elderly people avoid financial abuse, and to organizations that provided financial assistance to struggling families. I also set up a trust fund for Emma and Tommy that they'd access when they turned 25, old enough to be responsible with it, but young enough to benefit from it. Michael would never know about it unless the kids chose to tell him when they were older. Mr. Graves was eventually sentenced to 12 years in federal prison for elder fraud. Dr. Peterson lost his medical license. Sunset Manor was shut down pending investigation. And me? I kept living in my house, managing my own affairs, making my own decisions. I joined a book club, took up watercolor painting, and started volunteering at a literacy center. I also started dating a nice widower named Frank who I met at the library. He doesn't know about my money either, but he knows about my strength, my independence, and my slightly wicked sense of humor. That's enough. A year after that terrible phone call that changed everything, I was cleaning out my desk when I found the journal Patricia had asked me to keep, the one documenting my mental state and daily activities. I flipped through it, reading entries from those dark weeks when I thought my own son was planning to steal my life. Some of the entries were angry, some were heartbroken, but as I read on, I saw something else emerging: strength, determination, a refusal to be victimized. Today I realized that love without respect is not really love at all, read one entry. It's just manipulation dressed up in prettier clothes. Another, I am not naive. I am trusting. There's a difference. Naive means you don't understand what's happening. Trusting means you believe the best about people until they prove you wrong. Michael proved me wrong, but that doesn't make me naive. It makes him unworthy of my trust. And this one, from near the end, I thought the worst thing that could happen would be losing my son. But I realize now that the worst thing that could happen would be losing myself. And I refuse to do that. I closed the journal and smiled. That woman who wrote those words, she was someone I was proud to be. My phone rang. It was Emma. "Grandma, can I ask you something?" "Of course, sweetheart." "Daddy says you're the smartest person he knows. Is that true?" I laughed. "I don't know if I'm the smartest, honey, but I've learned some important things." "Like what?" "Like how to tell the difference between people who love you and people who just want something from you. Like how to stand up for yourself even when it's scary. And like how to forgive someone without forgetting what they did." That sounds really hard. It is hard, but it's also worth it. "Grandma." "Yes. I love you." "I love you too, Emma. More than you'll ever know." After we hung up, I sat back in my chair and looked around my house that I'd almost lost in more ways than one. The afternoon sun was streaming through the windows, making everything warm and golden. I thought about trust and betrayal, about family and money, about the difference between being naive and being kind. I thought about Michael, working at his hardware store, trying to rebuild his life one honest day at a time. I thought about Emma and Tommy, growing up in a complicated world where they'd have to learn their own lessons about love and loyalty. Most of all, I thought about myself, a 62-year-old woman who'd discovered she was stronger than she'd ever imagined, who'd learned that sometimes the people who call you naive are really just telling you that they think you're an easy target. They were wrong. I wasn't naive. I wasn't an easy target. I was a woman who'd survived betrayal by the person she loved most in the world, and who'd come through it not bitter or broken, but wiser. And that, I realized, was worth more than $30 million. Because at the end of the day, money is just paper and numbers in an account. But dignity, self-respect, and the knowledge that you can survive anything, those are treasures that no one can steal from you. Not even your own son. As I finish telling you this story, I want you to know that I'm not sharing it for sympathy or revenge. I'm sharing it because I know there are other people out there, other mothers, fathers, grandparents, who might be facing similar situations. If someone in your family is pressuring you to sign over financial control, if they're telling you that you're too old or too confused to manage your own affairs, if they're making you feel guilty for wanting to maintain your independence, trust your instincts. You are not too old to make your own decisions. You are not too confused to know what's best for you. And you are definitely not obligated to hand over control of your life just because someone claims to love you. Real love doesn't require you to give up your autonomy. Real love doesn't call you naive for wanting to protect yourself. Real love supports your independence, even when it's inconvenient. If you found this story helpful, please share it. And remember, you are stronger than you think, smarter than they assume, and more valuable than the money they're trying to take. Stay strong. Stay aware. And never, ever let anyone convince you that protecting yourself is selfish. Because it's not. It's survival. And you deserve to survive with your dignity intact. Thank you for listening to my story. Take care of yourselves out there.